Welcome back to Citizen Arcane, where we discuss pretty much whatever takes my fancy. A lot of that is minor league sports and books. And I recently came across a podcast that I was aware of. So, The Arena Fan with Tim Capper had a podcast for a long time with the previous incarnations of the Arena Football League. And then when it folded about 4 years ago, that podcast just sort of ended. They still had the website. The discussion board was not very active, but they have revived the podcast, and it looks like they're doing some work on the website and the discussion board too. And their first two podcasts have been long interviews, long form interviews with the commissioner of the new Arena League, which is Lee Hutton. And I was really pleasantly surprised with how in depth they went and how much actual information came out. So, as a follower of these minor league sports, a lot of times there's just a lot of talk, and oftentimes when these interviews are given, there is just it's vapid. There's just not much there. And also, I'm just skeptical of all of these new leagues and when old leagues are revived, it also leaves me with some skepticism. I'm saying that in reference to the new XFL and the new USFL, which this weekend is the first weekend that they've played against each other. So I mean, a lot of times, the new product is sort of ersatz, as it were, of the old one. But in both of those cases, I think they're doing a good job, and I think they're building a foundation. I'm going to talk a lot more later about the XFL and the USFL and where I think they're going to go. But back to the Arena Football League. These interviews that have been done, and there's more to come, again, on the Arena Fan podcast, I'll put some links below, were very informative. So they came when the original announcement was made in February. I think they had said at that time that they were going to have 16 different ownership groups, which is a lot different than the models from things like the Alliance of American Football, which was a single entity group. And I think the last couple of incarnations of the Arena Football League were single entity groups or close to it. And, it hasn't worked out. But then the flip side is with these individual ownership groups, you get flaky owners, you get egos, you get all kinds of craziness. So you kind of have to have a strong commissioner. And Mr. Hutton alluded to that. I really enjoyed it. So today I'm going to go over some of the things he said that I was pleased to hear, and give some free advice that they don't really need. So he said that 8 of the 16 teams would probably be announced within the next 60 days. So we're looking at, probably the end of June we'll know at least half of the league. Hopefully they'll roll out these teams with some fanfare and start to build some support. He said for sure St. Louis was going to be in the league, which is amazing because, that's how I found the Arena Football League many, many years ago. I saw a couple of Stampede games at a time in my life when I was kind of broke, and I think I've told this story before. At least one of those times, as I recall, I showed up with like $8 in my pocket for a $4 football game, and they just waved me in, and I didn't have to pay anything, and I had a great time and really enjoyed it. So the fact that St. Louis is going to be in, and they're confident that St. Louis is going to be in, leaves me happy. And I assume they're going to be playing downtown. There's been several teams out in St. Charles in the last few years, but I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully, and he did specifically mention the Battlehawks of the XFL. Hopefully, there'll be some arrangement like the XFL has with the IFL right now, and we'll see how that goes. That would be optimal for all concerned. He said definitely Philadelphia, the Soul, would be returning. I've always felt like Ron Jaworski was one of the white hats of the Arena Football League in its previous incarnations, really did everything possible to make it work, and hopefully he'll be involved as well. Another declared team he said was going to be New Orleans, and New Orleans had the Knight and the Voodoo. I think I'm trying to think if there was any other incarnations in New Orleans, but hopefully it'll be the Voodoo that comes back. I got to see them play one time. I really enjoyed the product. the full entertainment package that they had down there, which includes everything from the pregame, which was there was lots of fun stuff to do before and after the game, as I recall. I took my wife and my wife's sister and niece, who was quite young at the time. Everybody had a good time, and it had everything. It had the cheerleaders. It had cool mascots, plural. It had a great environment, good music. The game itself was, also fun. And mentioned that there would be California representation. With that said, I'm hoping it's the San Jose SaberCats that come back. He also mentioned that there would be new teams and teams that people were familiar with. I personally have long said that I think the National Arena League needs to be folded into the IFL, or in some way just get those legacy teams, the teams that really are still strong. The Predators are still strong. I watched a little bit of a game of theirs online recently, and they're still getting fans in the stands, and it is a markedly lower tier league than when the Arena Football League was strong. And then, of course, from the NAL, there's also the Sharks and the Carolina Cobras, which they're talking about some of the old times when the Cobras were in the Arena Football League. And then he did mention something, and I'm sorry, I don't have the podcast available. I didn't take notes. I was at work listening to it. But the Empire, if they could bring the Firebirds back as the Albany Firebirds, I think that would be just awesome. Anyway, if you get a chance, I'll definitely put the links below. Please do go and find that podcast and give it a listen if you're into this sort of stuff. Also, please like and subscribe to this channel. We really appreciate it. Every click is important. I did want to mention, too, because as you know, we're trying to get clicks for our products online, that they did mention a possibility of teams in Mexico as an expansion going forward. Because if you'll recall, the National Arena League had the Monterrey Steel, which I think played a complete season. They finished out their season, but it didn't last. And, there's also, I guess, a strong and growing Mexican presence with the Liga de Futbol Americano Professional. I would totally pay, when it comes to the USFL or the XFL, to see a friendly, like they do in soccer, like, say, between, the Birmingham Stallions and the Reds of that league, or, something like the Gamblers versus the Dinos, or the Battlehawks versus, the Reds or whatever. Anyway, let me know what you think. Would you pay to see a friendly between the USFL or XFL and another league? How do you feel about the Arena Football League coming back? And just in general, do you think they will make it? Will they take a snap, or is it just another awaiting disappointment for those of us that enjoy that kind of thing? Have a great day, and thanks again for listening.